All right. Hi, guys. I can see Ian, Tim, Stain. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Thank you all for joining. I always like to start on time because we are recording this. My name is Adi, and I'm from Platform, and we're going to have a very full session. So we're going to get started. Please open the chat, the Q&A chat. I have a message for you there, and you can add your questions. So today I have two amazing clients from very different projects. So Kevin from University of Missouri, 30,000 students, and Brandon Walt from Colby College from Maine, and 2,000 students. So very different type of organizations, but a lot of similarities. So why don't I hand it over to you guys to just quickly introduce yourself. Kevin, why don't you do this first?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Bailey. I'm the Director of Digital Service in our main marketing and communications team on campus. I've been with the university for about 25 years, have a history in IT, and moved over to marketing communications about 7 years ago.
Thank you. Brandon?
Yep, and I'm Brandon Waltz, Senior Web Operations Manager at Colby College in Waterville, Maine. I'm part of the communications and marketing team on campus, and I've been with the college for about 5 years now. And I come from a background of software development.
Sounds good. So during the, well, it had to be stuck for me. There you go, agenda. So we're going to talk about the decision-making process or the buying process, the culture shift, team structuring process, why platform, the tech stack that each one of you is using, and moving to the future. What's next? So we're going to start with you, Kevin.
Okay. So our journey to the cloud started about 2017. We were no different than a lot of large universities where we had departmental servers. We also had our main IT department that ran a virtual server farm for local LAMP development. We were supporting 5+ content management systems in addition to just static HTML pages and things like that. And our web developers were distributed out into departments. We used an awful lot of vendors for web development and hosting as well. And that led to, the term you kick around, technical debt. We had a lot of technical debt at that point in time where things were so different at so many different levels that trying to figure out how to support them from a single group of developers was a challenge. We also had security breaches. We had downtime. When one person would do something on the central server, it could take down everyone's website. And so we had a push to consolidate all of our hosting, our labor, our branding to make things better for the university going forward. At the same time, we had leadership changes and things like that at that time, which made this a very high priority for the system and the campus. Next slide, please. Adi, can you move the slide?
Yeah. Going very slow right now. It's got to be live, right? So let me just, there
we go.
Sorry about that.
So this is an eye chart, I guess, of showing the difference between what you're familiar with a LAMP stack and what we ended up with on our workflow for platform. And you can see right in the middle there is GitLab, which is a core component for us of using anything. Now, we do all of our local development on Lando, so we pull the environment down to a local Lando environment with Docker and stuff like that. Work on our code. We push that back up to GitLab, create a merge request, which is moved up to platform in an environment separate from production. That gives us the opportunity to do more testing and to also share with our customers if we're adding features and stuff so they can QA it before it goes live. And then once it's all ready, we merge it back into the live database on platform. So removes us from having to have people in the back end of the websites and doing code. and really just makes the departments and the units on campus have to deal with content. Content's king, so they have to deal with that rather than the IT kind of infrastructure. Next slide, please. So kind of hit on this in the workflow thing, but all development, hosting, and design, we've moved all that stuff into our core digital service team. We use GitLab for all code repos and automations. We use CI/CD on GitLab. We've got technology standards established. So we won't stand up websites anymore with just a plethora of plugins or modules and things like that. We've got to narrow it down so that we're not creating more technical debt as we develop new websites. And the departments can't install, remove, update. They can't do any of that stuff that they used to have in WordPress. You've got hey, there's updates for you. Click this button. They can't do that anymore. It's all centralized. They rely on that. And like I say, their role now is just content. Next slide, please. So we implemented in digital service, I call it an agency model. I think it mirrors what you get when you go out to vendors for the most part, broken up into support and projects. So we will stand up units with a memo of understanding is what we call it, a maintenance agreement. Basically on a retainer basis, they pay us a number of hours every month. And, it's kind of shared risk where if we overestimate how many hours they need in a year to maintain their inventory, then they've paid a little bit more, but we adjust it every year. So it's worked out pretty well. And then we bill back to the departments on a monthly basis for both projects and support. Next slide, please. This is our organization structure for my team. I'm the director. We've broken it down into, we have a front end team, which includes the staff that do development and support, the UI design team, and the design system itself, which we use to activate our brand basically on websites. We have a project manager. We also have an analysis and content team that does all our SEO and GA for GTM stuff. We also have a mass email for content that we do, which is kind of different from, I think, what other people might do. Then we have the back-end hosting and automation team, which takes care of how our CMSs work on Platform and how Platform is configured for our needs. So I think I'll hand it over to Brandon.
Brandon, you're on mute.
Classic. Let's talk about Colby. So our journey to the cloud started in 2019, and the state of web at the college was we had a very old, very fragile, and very bloated WordPress multi-site, which had about 237 sites in it. And I mean, we're a small college, about 2,000 undergrad students, and so that is a lot to manage. It was in desperate need of a redesign, and the institution wanted to make moves to redesign. All of that whole ecosystem was filled with a lot of technical debt. So we had, plugins that were built by students. We had themes that were built by vendors. We had all these pieces and parts that were built by many developers over a long period of time. There was no process for releases. There was a notion of that. We did everything by FTP. And so it was a matter of, well, it seems to work on my machine. And like, if something goes wrong, we'll just troubleshoot on prod, which is a big no-no. And all that being said, that big multi-site couldn't be replicated locally on a personal machine. So it's not like you could do local development in a dev test prod workflow. And so it made it very challenging to work with. I know that so we had it split between communications and IT at the time. It was kind of like 50% back-end IT, front-end communications. I know IT was doing a lot of like DDoS mitigation at the time because we had no centralized CDN or any security, global security like that. I know that I was dealing with fires all day. I would have a list of emails in my inbox every single day of like things that are broken, things that need to be fixed. And everything needed to be reverse engineered because it wasn't built by my team at the time. So it just made everything a lot slower to build and troubleshoot. Next slide, please. All right, so the buy-in process for moving to the cloud for us at Colby was we had to start to define what a modern web looked like. And so we had never really had the conversations here about what is source control? What is it used for? How do we use something like Git? How can it benefit us? What are dependencies? What is dependency management? What are our core set of tools? Before it was everyone got kind of whatever they want. And so it was constantly formulating that idea, having the conversations around campus of like, this is a modern standard web workflow. And here's how it can benefit the institution when you talk about consistency, predictability, security, that kind of stuff. And we were looking at cloud providers at the time, and we built some very non-mission critical POCs on platform. And that helped with the arguments around campus that's like, hey, it's possible. Check out what we built on platform. This was from a starter kit, and it was very quick to build, and it comes with all these standard tools, and it's very easy for the developer to stand something up very quickly. Thankfully, we had a very good head start, a great head start actually from our friends at Mizzou, who actually gave us a starter kit repo to build from. And so we ran with that starter kit and added a bunch of stuff that we needed for Colby. And then at the same time, we established a web steering committee that got us through the redesign of the new Colby.edu that launched a little over a year ago. Next slide. Okay, the culture shift here. So it was very important to identify and articulate the importance of the web, and the fact that the web, it can be, and I strongly think it is, a representation of the brand. What your prospective students, your current students, faculty members find online represents the institution. So also highlighting what was at stake if we let that fall through the cracks. And the things that matter, like accessibility, SEO, security, predictability, consistency of look and feel, all that stuff, you can't have a decentralized model. Like you need to centralize those things to keep tabs on all of those in your technology stack. And then really talking about consistency, predictability, and the fact that with that comes speed. If you can build a reusable set of tools over and over and over again, the next project is going to be very quick to build. Okay, next slide. All right, so we wanted to get back some of our control, and I'm talking about us in communications. We wanted to start to centralize all of the parts that were kind of governed by different groups around the institution and start to centralize those more in communications because we had more of the skills. And so we wanted to position ourselves as being the arbiter of the web. Now what that looks like is we are that, but for the public web. And we've been talking a little bit more about the private web internal communications as the years have gone on, especially because we've been successful with Platform. And so we were going to take some of those responsibilities away from our IT team and let them focus on other areas, which they do best, and let us focus on the web. And so the benefits for the institution were a single point of contact. And I know that goes a long way because it's like, who do I contact for this thing that I'm either want to have built or having a problem with? We have we have visibility and expertise into the full stack. And so no longer is it split between groups on campus. It's like we are the ones that own the full stack. We get to have consistency of code and standards, which were sorely needed here. And there hadn't been standards in the past. And then, like I said before, with that comes speed. Okay, next slide. As far as our standards go, we had to build those from the ground up. And so we had to think about all aspects. So Git, for example, like how do we use Git? Like what is a master branch? What is a dev branch? What is a release branch? What is a feature branch? And have consistency in the source control model. And then also instituting code standards. Like we want our PHP code to have, 4 spaces for tabs instead of 2 spaces. And we want to have large functions look like this and comment blocks and all that stuff. We use PHP CS for that. We, over the years, developed a GitHub Actions set of scripts for us that actually interact with platforms. So for us, it's like we can run a bunch of automated tests and we can run some checks. And then at the end of the pipeline is when it actually gets deployed to platform, which is kind of neat. Platform is flexible like that. And then something simple like naming conventions, like having predictable names for things like plugins or themes or like different pieces and parts that go into building an application. And on the side is a visual of what a Git flow workflow looks like. Next slide. Yep. All right. So here's generally the approaches that we took when we were talking about culture shift. So we had to get out of the business of someone has a quote unquote great idea and they must have a website for that, like today. And so it was really kind of doubling down on the standards and the code versus the politics. So we had to get in the habit of like saying no more often. And like not everyone gets a website all the time for different things that they may or may not think is important. And we had to talk about what is QA. They didn't have a QA process here at Colby, and so that goes in hand in hand with the next bullet point, which is the supported browser policy. There was no notion of that either. So it's like, what browsers are we supporting, and how does that influence QA? We can do also automated testing, and then what part of QA is manual. And then talking about code reuse, we want to have code that's reusable as much as we possibly can. That way it's a single set of tools that we use and it's predictable and it's built over time, and it makes future projects very quick to build because you're just pulling on the core set of tools that you've already built. And then if need be, you can add modifications, you can optimize those core set of tools over time. But we want to keep that reusable and we want to keep that relatively small. Another benefit of platforms specifically, and what we talked about when going through culture shift is not everyone can download plugins and themes. Like only developers should be able to do that if there's an actual need for that, which before didn't happen. It seemed like everyone was able to add whatever they wanted, which left us pretty vulnerable. We keep editorial access very tight, and we do maintenance every 6 months or so. I know before it was like we had a website that grew organically over almost a decade, and it was like a set it and forget it model where it was like you didn't really do constant iteration. But now we take the approach of like constant iteration, constant improvement for all our sites. Next slide, please. So we run a small team at Colby. We're a small institution. This is the view of our digital team in communications and marketing. I'm actually a level down, so I'm the manager of web operations. But on our digital team, we have one head, the director of digital strategy, and then in the digital team, we have a designer, social media, and then we have the web. And so there's one person under me, and we handle all of the public-facing web applications um, for the college. We also run an agency-like model where now what we do is we take requests from the community, and then we have to look at that request as a digital team and figure out some things about it, like is it internal communications versus external? We only handle external right now. Much like I'm sure everyone else does, you have to scope the task, you have to prioritize it, and then you have to either use project managers or not. We have a project manager on staff here in communications. A lot of times, if it's something that is a smaller project, they don't get involved. And then the implementation phase, and then QA, code review. Code review was something that also didn't really happen here at the time. And then release. And this all happens in a dev test prod workflow inside of Platform, which they make easy. So it's easy to develop locally. It's easy to push to a dev server and then schedule the release for production.
So as we move on to why we chose Platform, I think what you're going to hear in these next couple of slides from both Brandon and I are kind of the same things. What we were looking for, how we ended up, was one of the reasons why we got Platform. Number one is flexibility. We didn't end up with just one CMS. We narrowed it down from 5 to 2. We're WordPress and Drupal right now. And obviously, when we were out looking, we could have chosen a provider that would have forced us to go just WordPress or forced us to go just Drupal or something like that. But since we were still not at the point where we could go to each one of our business units on campus and say, this is the template you're using, this is the number of features you're going to get on the website, here's how it's all going to work. We needed something that gave us a lot of flexibility, because we knew our trajectory was going to be spending a lot of time just moving existing websites to the cloud without too much effort on rebuilding them to current standards. And then when we got to the cloud, we would rebuild to current standards, which is kind of what we're finishing up that phase of our projects right now. So with Platform, we could do that. We had one workflow process, but it gave us flexibility to choose the tech stack components that we wanted. And it was optimized for cloud hosting. Also, the security aspect was a huge thing for us. We needed to keep customers, our clients, and vendors, any agencies working with us, out of the server level settings. And we needed to control the code. And as Brandon said, without that control, you can't ever get to standardization. You can't ever get rid of that technical debt. So Platform's a huge tool in our arsenal to get that done. It's pretty budget friendly. I've had no one since we've implemented Platform complain to me about what it costs every month to host. They're very aware of the needs of higher ed, and it has never been a question that I've had to answer about, the cost for hosting. We were fortunate, to be honest with you, since we charge back everything anyway. We had implemented a chargeback model while it was still locally hosted through our IT department. So I think the culture kind of already shifted that way, where people didn't just expect they wanted a website, it was free, kind of stuff like that. And it was, of course, a modern workflow. GitLab, CI/CD, automated testing and patching. We can do so much more than we ever could previous to a cloud provider.
Yeah, probably this is going to be quite similar. So why we chose Platform? So at the time, like I said, our multi-site, we needed a redesign desperately. And so we were in this mode of like, well, let's take a look at the stack. Let's take a look at the tools. We're going to redesign anyway. What is the ideal ecosystem that we want to build here? What is the ideal CMS? The ideal hosting provider? And so we're in that discovery period. And so why platform was important was that we could really take it where we wanted to go and we could build whatever we wanted to build. That meaning that it could have been WordPress, it could have been Drupal, it could have been something in Laravel, it could have been some static site, something. Platform gives you the flexibility to do all of that, and a lot of times you can do all of that within the same project, which is cool. So we wanted to be collaborative across campus, and so we didn't know necessarily what technologies they were using in IT or in within other groups around campus. And so since platform can handle anything, it was our way to say, hey, like this could be our one platform. We can collaborate with you. We can bring your services also into the fold if we wanted to. And so another point for us was absolute developer control, which Kevin was saying. We needed to get to standards as fast as possible. And a lot of times I would say the editors or like the higher ups that didn't really know what it takes to build websites and stable applications were the ones that had the control. And so that's what led you to the like everyone gets a website for every little project that they think is important. Whereas if you make the shift and you give the developer control, you can have the stability, you can have the speed, you can have the consistency, because that's what we care about anyway. Their model is very much developers working with other developers. I remember being on calls with some of their solutions folks and some of their support folks when we got started. And they were very in tune to what we were doing. And it was a very good vibe when we're having conversations about potential workflows and solutions. So that was great, and also great on the customer service front. The use of Composer and Git out of the box, that's how their workflow is out of the box. And so we knew we needed the source control bit. We knew we needed the dependency management bit, and the CI/CD. So we could do that continuous improvement, and we can do deployments on Fridays, Friday afternoons, or deployments on weekends. It's all good if it's working locally, if it's working on dev, and we've tested it, like it's going to work on production. Good support and documentation. There isn't a week that goes by that I'm not in the documentation about something. And so that was good. That was a selling point for us. And at the end of the day, so we run a small team of 2 people. And so we don't have deep knowledge on the ins and outs of server provisioning. But at the end of the day, with platform, you don't necessarily need to have that, because at the end of the day, it's just a recipe, and it's just a single file that's like, I want this, I want that, I want that, and I want this amount of space, go build it. So it's nice, it makes it easy.
So we'll switch over to what our technology stack is that we use at the University of Missouri. So for developers, our web developers, we do local development. So we use Lando for that local development environment. So Lando comes with Docker, I think, for the spinning up an environment to work on. We use GitLab. We had been using the community version of GitLab when we started, and it was not optimized for our use. So we actually went to the GitLab.com version about 2 years ago and been happy with it. And so we've really been able to implement the CI/CD, automated testing, things like that for it. One side note: when we do our monthly code updates, security patches, and things like that for Drupal and WordPress, the third Wednesday of every month, and Paul Gilzo, when he was here, he started this process, and John Boyer's continued it. But it takes us now about 10 minutes to run a script across all of our just about 300 accounts on platform to find out what plugins and what core modules need to be updated. It spits out a merge request to the web developers who then go and just verify that the website's still working, and then it's promoted to production. So, instead of having to touch each and every site just for plugin updates or core security updates every month, and spend an hour and a half on each site, we're down to several minutes to get all those things updated every month and we feel pretty comfortable that we're not missing things either that way. So it's been a huge improvement. We use Composer, of course, for dependency management. And of course, the various command line tools that come with all those systems that we've got in place. On platform, we're doing Drupal and WordPress hosting. We actually have a couple one PHP app out there as well that we've developed for some other things. We use the Fastly CDN that Platform provides for some of our larger projects. We also use Simple SAML for our SSO. We use the Redis cache on Drupal, and the control panel with Platform has gotten so much better over the years. It's really nice for when you've got web developers who are more visual versus web developers who are more comfortable on command line tools. It's coming pretty close to in parity with that kind of stuff for a lot of our needs. Next slide, please. Then some other tools that we have in our stack. We use New Relic for, kind of up-down monitoring on our sites. Platform does have an offering for that, but we were using New Relic before, and we just stayed with that. And we also use the Google programmable search engine across most of our websites for local search, and GA4 and GTM, of course, for that kind of stuff. What this gives us today and into the future is we don't have to focus so much more like we used to on how this thing's going to work on a server and stuff. We're now focusing a lot more of our time and effort on our branding and UI improvements within our themes and on our websites. The brand is really what we're trying to sell, what we're trying to abide by. The brand is everything, right? So we're finally being able to focus our attention on the most important thing for the university instead of worrying about technology on the back end as much. We've got that standardized tech stack. So we're finally to the point where, in the past, when a web developer was dedicated to like the College of Arts and Science, they might have been one person supporting all those College of Arts and Science websites. And it was very hard for them to take a break, right? They had no one to back them up. So now our developers can step in and support just about any other website that's out there, WordPress or Drupal, if that's their skill set. We also are able to let vendors know a little bit more explicitly, because we still use vendors for websites that are not strategically valuable, I guess you could say, to the university. They're still valuable to the university, but it's not where our main efforts are put in. So we still allow people to use vendors, but we are the interface between the customer and the vendor, telling the vendor, this is our technology stack, these are our standards. Don't go beyond this line without talking to us first. And that's really wiped out an awful lot of technical debt that we've had too. And of course, we've reduced the number of plugins and modules that we actually support over time.
This is our tech stack that we use at Colby. We are a GitHub campus, Composer for PHP, dependency management, WordPress. We're using the Gutenberg editor and ACF. I should also have said that we're using Timber and Twig for our theming engine. Lando for local development, which is like a layer over Docker. MySQL. We use Okta for SSO. We have Cloudflare as our CDN, which we're using a lot of Cloudflare services. We're using Satis, which is our premium plugin repository that interfaces with Composer, so we can pull in premium plugins through Composer. And then some front-end stuff, we're using Yarn, Vue, Webpack, Tailwind. We use Algolia for our search. And then some monitoring tools. We have Site Improve. We're using Site Improve for our analytics as well, so all of that gets sent to Site Improve. We're using Sentry for JavaScript logging, and then we're also using on a automated testing level Lighthouse for testing accessibility and SEO and all that fun stuff. All right, so the future for us, so we've had a lot of moving parts and a lot of success over the last few years, moving to the cloud with Platform. Like I said before, we had our main Colby.edu launch last March. And so that was the last big push. And so now what we have is we have a stable code base and we have stable tools. And so it moves now to basically just steering the ship. So we've been able to reduce our amount of external vendors. Now we're able to accommodate most everything in-house. And we're just on the lookout for how to make constant improvement to our applications, constant improvement to performance and SEO, accessibility. We want to automate tasks as much as possible. And so we've been doing a fair amount of scripting these days. So scripting pipelines. We've been also pretty deep into AI, as I'm sure other people have been, and how to automate tasks. And it's really just monitoring web quality. We're trying to codify more standardized training models for our staff around campus as well. And adding to the reusable component library and optimizing those as much as we can. And then keeping our eye on the web development community. It is our goal not to pigeonhole the college when it comes to technology. We don't ever want to be a part of the technical debt problem. And so for us, it behooves us to keep an eye on where the web development community is going to be on that edge as well. So we're not supporting more niche technologies if that were to happen. And then since we've had so much success over the years with Platform, we've been talking about potentially doing more internal communications inside of our communications team. We've been focused on external and marketing, but there's a real need now, and that's been made clear for the internal communications side as well. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I did a terrible job at moving the slides forward. Apologies for that. But we did it and we went through it all, and I really appreciate you guys. So now we get to the awkward part of the session where anyone on the call can ask questions. I know that sometimes we will have some fake questions. I don't like that. I think there's enough people on the call. If they have some questions about, how you did something or not, some challenges, please send it to us now. Or, of course, you can connect with you guys via LinkedIn or directly, or with us through the Calendly. But you guys have shared a lot of tips and tricks and kind of your journey and kind of what worked and what didn't work. So I really appreciate it. It was really super valuable. So if anyone has any question, we'll kind of wait for a couple of minutes awkwardly on the line. I think it's worth it. The guys are sharing a lot of the good, bad, and the ugly. So I think if anybody has a project, something that they're looking at creating, I think it will be a good opportunity to ask a question. Thank you, Chris. I think so too.
I can add actually one more thing that I didn't touch on. So at Mizzou, Kevin, they do chargebacks. We don't do chargebacks right now for projects. And we've talked about that. But right now, all of the kind of the budgeting and all of the work falls on communications right now, which is manageable at the moment. But there's definitely been talk over the years of what would a chargeback system look like.
Yeah. And I think we talked about how the difference is in the size of the organization and the structure, right? It's 30,000 students to 2,000, and we're hoping that you'll grow.
Believe me, I'd much rather not do chargebacks. It puts all the administrative clerical work on my team to get that done. I'd rather the budget office just fund us off the top, but I'm sure that's what everyone says.
Excellent. Well, I think you guys did such an amazing job that it's super clear. Again, I appreciate it very, very much. And I'll send everyone the recording. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.